Hey guys, this is Victor. I'm back again helping inventors get to market. I'm creating a series of videos just just for that. The first video was about making sure you have conviction and motivation to see your idea through. If you don't, the first challenge that you will inevitably meet might just be enough to make you quit. And that's not going to create lasting results. It's not going to get you to the finish line. So pick something that you can have true conviction and passion for. Now, that first video I made about conviction and everything like that, motivation, that was the first half of the vetting cycle. The second half is making sure there's a series of criteria that are satisfied. Your product needs to satisfy, of course. And I wanted to run through those for you. The first thing when it comes to looking at products that are going to actually have a chance of being successful financially, of course, is to make sure that there's enough margins. You need to make sure there's sustainable margins. So if you expect your product to be, let's say the cost of goods is $5, you want to sell it for at least 20. In places like Walmart or Target or big box stores, you may want to sell it for 5 to 8x. So it could be 25 to 40 or it could be a lot more. And the reason for that, by the way, is because there's more hands in the middle of the process. What I mean by that is you get a product in the manufacturer, store shelves, you got distributors, you got fulfillment, you got a variety of things in between that are going to contribute to your costs. Therefore, the cost of the product needs to go up, of course, to the customer. Now, contrary to that, if you start off with just Amazon, which I'm a really big fan of Amazon, one of the biggest benefits is that you don't have to mark it up as much. Like you can sell a product for 3x on Amazon and do just fine, but just make sure that you can get a satisfactory markup. Now, a secondary portion of the markup discussion is making sure there's a large enough addressable market. If you have a product that's very niche, it's not to say that can't be successful, but in most cases, in those instances, you'd want to have a more premium product like a $100 or $200 item, or like close to 100. That way, if you don't get as many sales or you don't move as much product, well, at least you're making a sufficient amount of revenue per item to make sense of it as a business. That's for those people that have a niche market, like something very specific. Next thing I want to go over is make sure your product idea is feasible. If there are too many questions about whether it would even work, let's say it's a new type of energy harvesting idea, or like a new type of motor, or some better performing screw or some fastener or tool. That's not necessarily a bad idea, but you almost always have to actually prototype that to ensure that it works. You don't want to rely on paper calculations and such to determine if it will actually work. In the instances where it's not certain that it would work exactly the way you need it to, then that means there's going to be more slow down periods. There's going to be more development to it, which will imply more costs, more development costs. And if you don't have the funding to get engineering and you do a lot of that work yourself, then it's going to take a long time. Okay, take it from me. You don't want to start off with a product that's going to take too much feasibility testing, because that's only going to eat more and more of your budget, and that's going to take away from your ability to get the product business formed, or however you want to actually form that business. You need funds. You need a certain amount of funds. Whether you raise that, whether you pull it out of your own pocket, whatever the case may be, you just don't want to introduce challenges where it doesn't have to be. And then the third criteria is just make sure it's within your means. If you have this grandiose idea, nothing wrong with grand ideas, by the way, nothing wrong with monstrous ideas, but just realize monstrous ideas take a hell of a lot of work and take a hell of a lot of money. And so you want to pick an idea that you're passionate about, but that you have the means to actually get done. So like in a lot of cases, this boils down to funds. Well, if you're strapped on cash, you want to pick something that won't be as cost intensive as some other ideas you may have. So just keep that in mind. Nothing wrong with getting a big idea together and going out seeking investment, but just know if someone doesn't bite, then you're kind of stuck, and I want to make sure you have more outs, as they say in some of these games. We want to make sure you have more outs, more areas where you can go. If one thing didn't work, you can go to another. I just don't want it to be putting you in a position where all you need is money. There's usually something that can be done whether you have money or not. Now, are you willing to work to exploit those opportunities and to destroy the challenges that you find? Are you willing to do that? Well, by now you should be. But these are the 3 criteria. So just summarize. Make sure there's sustainable markets or markups, and then ensure that your market is a sizable market. I'm not asking you to pick the biggest possible markets. There's nothing wrong with that either. But just pick something that you can do some quick research, quick online research, and see if there's other product solutions selling, and just make sure it's a bustling market. Now, there's something to also be said about a market that's really saturated, and that's something where I have to go over like a specific call with you, instances where you have a lot of competition. That doesn't necessarily mean you can't be successful, but you have to be very careful and methodical in how you approach those instances. Second thing is make sure your product is feasible. I don't want you having to look at your idea and wonder, how does that work? How does this work? If it's something simple like a hinge and you just don't know which type of hinge to use, that's one thing. If it's creating some type of new wireless information transference system, something like that, then that would take a lot more fiddling, a lot more cost in general. It would just slow the process for you, and I don't want to introduce something like that to you, especially in your first product release. And then the last thing is make sure it's within your means. Make sure you're able to fund certain aspects. I'm not asking you to be money bags here, but just make sure that you have a good chance of being able to fund certain aspects. If you can save some money here and then put it into the product. It's tough to do things in product world without money. It really is. Not impossible. I've seen people do it. But just make sure you have the means to actually proceed, especially if you want to build your own business as opposed to licensing. If you want to build a business, then there's going to be a lot of money being thrown around here and there to make that vision a reality. So anyway, what do you think about the video, my friends? What do you think? Give me some comments. If you have any questions, if you're looking to release a product and you need someone to assist you in getting to market, reach out to me. LinkedIn's the best way currently. All right, catch you guys later. Bye-bye.